Ola, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a good idea to combine them because I think they have something in them both, and all these like this is a very typical way of solving a crisis if you haven't got a leadership program in your back pocket. I mean, you do this crazy stuff and basically make things worse than they were before, thinking that you have achieved control, but
it's safety. We have better control, and it's safer.
Yes.
And I simply love Nathan's turn on the whole thing. So I think if we go brutal all the way.
Okay.
We make this a thing. We want this organization to survive as an organization. We don't
community organization sounds so,
What?
What's that?
Community.
We are a gang.
It is, isn't it?
Yes. I was thinking though, I had one of my aspects was favors and obligations. What happens to that aspect that I was connected to? Does it just? Is it just there? What? Huh?
Well,
that's a good question, but I think nothing.
Yeah, I don't think it has like a game mechanics effect. It's not like you get a bonus for it or something.
No, I don't think so either. It is a little bit.
Nathan.
I'd say, Nathan, sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I have the same issue as my character is only based on obligations. If we take that out, my character becomes crippled completely. So it's either he has to go with everybody else, which could be a nice turn, or he's just not going to be useful at all. Which is also a nice thing to play.
I don't know about useless, but it definitely means that he's... Wait, do we come up with a new aspect so we always have 3? Do we come up with a
We
new...
always have 3.
Okay.
And as with words, we are going to still use the words we came up with in connection to the aspect we are going to develop.
Right.
And as with those, even if they, I mean,
it's okay if the aspects fade away.
Don't say anything about this, but my interpretation of it is that if my character is connected to that aspect, this is still an important thing for my character, either in its initial form, which may or may not lead to conflicts within the group, not even necessary within the group of players, but within the whole community, or my character is developing along the same lines as the aspect, and that's completely up to me.
I have an idea that might reinforce that. For example, if we have a character like mine, I identify very strongly with 2 of the aspects. One of them is the favors and obligations. So if that goes away, my character, and not every character has to react the same, but I know that my guy would probably complain about how it's not the way it used to be. Because that aspect... So, I mean, Jakob would still be an incredibly valued, respected member of the community, but Jakob would be like, maybe, it's not how it used to be. I used to be important. I used to be useful. I used to be important.
Yeah.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's also probably that's probably the idea too, because when you are in a group and something changes, somebody's gonna get mad and people will split.
Yeah.
So I think this is part of the game.
Right. They may stay around because of the relationships or because they have nowhere else to go, but they aren't going to be happy with the way it is. Their connection to it, their utility is brought down. So that actually, that's making even more sense the more I think about it.
So I think we have to think about that when working with our characters.
Oh yeah.
For example, my character liked working in the silence and had these obligations and so on, but he didn't like the music hall. Right. Now the obligations are gone, so he can still do good work, but he doesn't like the music hall, and maybe he will complain about that. Like,
Right.
why do we need music hall? Why?
Right.
We could have thrown that out instead or something.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
for an example.
There's something completely different to think about. It's not necessarily so that we are going to skip favors and obligations. Within the smaller groups, or between the 5 of us, if we see ourselves as some kind of leadership, those values could still be part of how we identify.
As an individual, yes, you might still be all about it and do things with it. It's just no longer thought of as part of the whole. The whole fine trousers don't self-identify that way anymore.
Probably not, because they are going to.
Yeah, if we lose the aspect by definition, I think they don't. So I think that this is all working. Everything everybody is saying is making more sense, and I just want to. I think that's great.
Now let's discuss more about it.
Oh no! Yeah, exactly. No.
So favors and obligations is the aspect we want to change.
Right.
Yes.
And we are basically halfway, because we already started to discuss how it changes.
Yeah, and I don't think we should just as Max suggested, I really don't think we should discuss anymore, or else we're going to lose it. I want to see it.
But we need something to replace it with.
Right.
So.
Right. Oh, shoot. We make these up out of nothing, don't we? Oh, man.
No, not out of
Can
nothing.
we roll on a table?
No, there is no table to roll out on. Try to basically evolve it. If we have small groups, instead of, think of family, clan. I'm still thinking a little bit along those lines. Because it should be something that the isolation as a whole identifies with. So if we take...
I have a positive one and a negative one. And either one could be...
Hold it a second. Anybody else getting anywhere?
I have a question. Does it have to be like the old aspect, or does it have to be something completely new?
It has to be connected to the old aspect in some way.
Okay.
So it's growing out of that we lose it, or out of that it grows into something else.
Or it's very specifically replaced by contrast.
That would be a possibility, yes.
Okay. Then I need to think a little bit.
I have one idea. It seemed to me that favor and obligations, that one was basically in people's minds. It was something that you just knew, and you had to remember that you owed someone a favor, and you had to kind of know your obligations to the community and so on. That was how I perceived it. But if you basically add too much of mechanics into that could evolve into something really nasty, where you
mean like a catalog or a record of who owes who stuff, and
there's a
enforcement
kind
of debt and punishments and things like that,
and also a kind of a really bureaucratic systems of points and like a gamified system of obligations and favors, that it becomes almost like a kind of a currency.
Nathan?
Based on that, I would say that we stay on obligation, but not in the nice sense of the term. It's like mandatory. You have to do that. Yeah. It's not, relationship thing because you're a friend and you can help each other. it's an obligation in the cynical way of saying things. Which I think makes sense if we consider that we had a lot of new people coming in that may not take that path as we did in the past, and we pushed it at its most, how do you say that? At its most perverse, maybe, way of doing it. Like, instead of bilateral relationship with obligation and, give it back, it's more you're not doing enough, so you will have to do more, and you're going to own me, and I'm going to own you more.
I completely get it. It's very mafia.
It's basically, if you don't do it, you're going to get killed.
You want to do it, right? You wouldn't refuse to do this, right?
Yeah, and because people did not went that far, then they left, or whatever we said before.
That's actually, I think that really sounds very nicely with what you guys played when we came up with the work for work, Lily.
Right. The nasty work.
Yeah.
So I feel like Nathan and Ola, you guys are saying really important things about the same thing. And I like, and it seems to be evolving in the conversation very quickly, and that's a good sign.
What did you have in mind, Don?
It would just cause trouble. It would be going back up the boat drifted. We rowed the boat down the stream, and I'm leaving that stuff back on the dock.
Good. So, as long as nobody finds it and draws any conclusions.
No, yeah, really.
Good. So
what word?
Yeah, now we need a word for it. I liked the idea. Ola, you were thinking of something almost physical, right?
Kind of like bookkeeping, a very like almost turn it into a currency. That was my.
Oh, I'm imagining like in a Charles Dickens novel, like those terrible little offices deep inside the banks or lawyers' offices with like these. The desk has all these tiny little, little shelves, and each one is stuffed full of papers, and it's this enormous record, and it's this terrible, wretched, narrow, bureaucratic little spot where only bad people do bad things. And you push paper from one place to another, and it means someone's going to die.
I like the word that Nathan said, mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to use that word.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we remove favors and just keep obligation, will it work?
Well, yeah, though we're changing the meaning, so maybe we could find a different word. Although I know what you mean. It's a transformation of obligation. I get it. But we could formalize it by, English is blessed with many words. So, So let's see. We have, if we say mandatory
obligations.
Now who's causing trouble? Let's see.
Mandatory law?
Well, I'm trying to think about the bookkeeping, like Ola said.
Okay.
Mm.
So it's like, the records, the records of payments owed, right? The accounts, that's the word I want. It's not an obligation, it's an account. Not like a nice obligation, right? A mutualism. It's not mutualism, it's an account. You keep the accounts. Right. You
say, I feel obligated to. It's something that you don't feel, you get it pushed
No,
into
your account is lacking.